All right, everyone. My name is Pascal Borel and I speak to you from the Swiss mountains. War in Ukraine, a subject that is close to my heart. I've been speaking about it extensively with my people in France, in Switzerland, in the US, of course, even in Germany. My question for you is simple. Have you decided as a citizen of a modern democracy to go at war with Russia? Have you made this decision? Are you willing to send your own sons dying on the battlefield to protect democracies? Well, clearly not, because democracies today are completely dysfunctional. In a democracy, may I remind you, demos kratos in Latin means the people, demos, decides kratos. You haven't decided anything, because if you had, you probably wouldn't have sent any weapons in Ukraine. Because when you send weapons, it is to kill people. It is to maintain a conflict as long as you can. And this is just not on. The warmongers, they send weapons to maintain our Western economies running. The people who want peace, they don't send weapons. They send negotiation tables and chairs that you screw the asses of those who have to sign a peace treaty on until the peace treaty is being signed. You don't send weapons. No way, once and for all. Back to the war in Ukraine. The project of our politics today is to clearly strike the Third World War. Because if there is a coalition of the US and all Western countries against Russia, it's what is commonly called a Third World War. And again, this is not on. We have to redefine the boundaries between which the politician can actually make decisions. Because it is for you, as a citizen of a modern democracy, to decide whether you're going to go at war or not. And today, their project for you, for me, for my kids, is to go at war against the first nuclear power of this planet. Not so much in number of nuclear warheads, because apparently the US may have a few more, but in the vectors that the Russians have at their disposal to bring those nuclear warheads where it hits and it hurts the most. They have a hypersonic technology that breaks the shock wave at the front of their missiles, or hypersonic gliders, may I remind you, because we're not talking about nice ballistic missiles of which the trajectory can be anticipated and you can intercept them literally whenever you wish. No, we're talking about hypersonic gliders, which not only do between Mach 12 and Mach 24, as in between 12 and 24 times the sound of speed. The speed of sound, would you please excuse me? We're talking about unstoppable vectors to deliver the nuclear charges wherever they want. In 206 seconds, between the moment they strike at the red button, for the warheads to be above Paris, 215 seconds for the warheads to be above London. That is how bad it is today. They have the same technology when it comes to submarine torpedoes. And they can strike at any naval fleet comprising the best plane carriers, the best, warships. And they can destroy them at once, because if one of those nuclear charges is detonated below water, between 50 and 100 meters below the surface, it's going to destroy any combat ship that we have at our disposal today. And the politicians have as a project for you to go at war against those kind of guys? I mean, they're out of their mind or what? Just to summarize it before we get to the specifics of this war. A few things about, Russia. Russia is part of Europe. It's clearly the natural ally from a continental and geographical point of view. It's part of Europe. It is our main ally when it comes to buying energy in order to maintain our industry running, our houses warm, and we get it for quite cheap. And, the US and the English have not found anything more clever but blowing up the pipeline that drives this energy, this low-cost energy, inverted comma, to Europe. Why is that? Because the natural competition of the US is not China, it's not India, no, it's Europe. Because from an economic standpoint, Europe is the greatest competitor of the US, and now Europe is forced to buy from the US gas at 5 times the price that we would get it from Russia. They need to interrupt that link, that natural continental link with our natural allies, Russia. Because, the other day I was over the phone with a friend of mine, very close relative, by the way. And he's telling me, those communists, we have to eradicate them from the planet. They are putting us at war and so on. The guy is 20 years backward. Russia is a modern economy. It's a market economy. They are not our enemies. They will not invade France, Germany, the Nordic countries, nor Switzerland, nor any of them. It is not in their interest. They're making commerce with it. They're trading with us. It is just so clear. It's crazy. Russia is a well-organized economy. Moscow is probably one of the cleanest and safest capital of Europe. You don't have any potholes in the streets. If you drive your bicycle, if you ride your bike, you're not going to crash. When if you do the same thing in New York, in Paris or London, man, you better watch where you put your front wheel, because otherwise you're going to hit the canvas in no time at all. That's clear. This is Russia for us. It is not our enemy. Furthermore, Russian people are good people. They are intelligent. They were the first one to launch a satellite in space. The first one to put a human life into space. And they've done it with a piece of string and a bit of cardboard. Joking, of course. But they did it with much lesser financial means than the one we had as Westerners when we did it. It's clear. They produce probably the best mathematicians, the best physicists. They produce the best chess player. Let's face it, when we play at Monopoly or eventually roulette or poker in Las Vegas, they play chess. They play chess. And, it requires a slightly different frame of mind. May I remind you? When you're a chess player, you need to anticipate like at least 5 to 10 moves ahead. You need to know the different strategies that you're going to combine with one another, at least 20 to 50. Otherwise, you may as well, go for a bike ride or a bit of skiing like we have here in Switzerland. But stop playing chess. Stop. Stop. The Russians are that kind of people. They are clever. They, as a friend of mine who works in the intelligence, and he's worked with Russian people, with Israeli people, with French people. And he was telling me, Pascal, the most amazing thing when you work with Russians is that they have a strategy for everything. They have it in their drawers. It's pre-written. It's all there. You want to speak about the Americans striking at Iraq, at Afghanistan, at Libya, at whichever country? They have it already pre-written. They know exactly what are their rules of engagement. And actually, the most amazing thing is that it's on the web. It's on the web. If you type Russian rules of engagement, enter, you'll read it all. And thinking that those guys are not going to stick to their words, it's an absolute mistake. It's an absolute mistake. They know it. Again, you know, they are fabulous strategists. They have a strategy for each and every scenario. Who won the Second World War? Who won the Second World War? Is it for the Americans? For the English? For the French? Come on. Second World War killed 53 million people, between 53 and 54 million people. The Russian alone had a 27 million death toll. They totaled by themselves alone more than half of the casualties during Second World War. They won the Second World War. They kept Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, I mean, you name them, at least 7 or 8 countries under their total control and command for decades. They are the largest, biggest winner of the war. Russians, they don't lose a war. They don't. And it is pretty much what we teach students in the first year of economics at the university. A nuclear power does not lose a war. I repeat, please listen. A nuclear power does not lose a war. If it has to go all the way, we'll all hit the canvas. We'll all be dead. They're not going to lose the war. They have rules of engagement. Check it out. Go for it. What's going on at the moment is kind of simple. The Russians, they make quite a lot of advances, you know, in the Ukraine territory. And then they were a bit surprised by all the weapons I have sent, you have sent against them. So they pulled back a little and they constructed an artillery chain which allows them to destroy whatever is coming at them. And it's exactly the scenario that we can observe and see at the moment. They're killing every single soldiers that are coming at them. They're destroying the material we're sending. And by the way, the Western world, the English, the Germans, we've sent obsolete material. It was because it was improving our profit and loss account. You know, when you send obsolete material, which is stuck into, you know, a storage room, of course, it weighs on your balance sheet. If you can get rid of this and have a credit line instead of the material, you can say it improves your bottom line. So, you know, the politicians, they used it that way. It's criminal. We are fighting to the last Ukrainian for financial reasons. We are responsible of hundreds of thousands of dying people for financial reasons. Are we out of our minds? Are we out of our minds? It's crazy. Furthermore, the Russians are quite rational, you know. When we send cruise missiles at $1.5 million a pop, they use hundreds of drones, which cost them $20,000 at the most. And, you know, when you are surrounded by those drones, which are coming to you by the thousands, do you think you're going to be able to erase them all from the sky? Of course not. You'll be hit. And, you know, if they send 200 drones at $20,000, you know, it's a fabulous saving and it's an increase in their efficiency. And they're doing this. They are pragmatic. You know, it's crazy. Furthermore, when you impose sanctions upon them, you give them the capacity to restructure their economy because they're going to produce the computer chips by themselves and they have the engineering for that. They even have the rare earth for that if they can't buy it from China. cutting the energy flow to Europe made sure that now they work 10 times more with Chinese people, with Indian people. The Russians, they are the first producer of gas worldwide. They are the biggest reserve of petrol, probably above Saudi Arabia, because we haven't prospected most of Siberia. So, of course they have those reserves. They are the first in iron, in aluminium, bauxite, copper, and. They are a self-sufficient economy, literally. They 160 million plus people. Putting the 300 men under the flags for them is piece of cake. We are not capable of doing that. Can Europe put 300,000 well-armed and equipped people against Russia? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. No, it's completely... It's going completely south at this stage in time. NATO are professional warriors. They are warmongers because they're thinking that the professional warriors want peace, like your medias are trying to tell you. It's a bit like thinking that the pharmaceutical industry wants to cure you from all your disease. No, they don't. They want to maintain you ill, so that they can carry on selling you the stuff that they produce, improving their bottom line, improving the share price on the stock market. It's just common sense. But the problem is, we are too sophisticated in our reasoning. You need to bring it down to the common, simplest denominator. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. You're in the wrong. If any of your explanations requires more than 40 seconds to be laid on the table, it's because you're misleading yourself. It's because you're in the wrong. Full stop. When you are against the war, you don't send weapons. I'm repeating myself. You send a negotiation table, you force people to sit around it until you have a peace treaty being signed. And this is what they've tried to do. Putin was trying to do it because he had a lot of the Russian-speaking people in Donbass, in Ukraine, being killed by Zelensky. Between 2013 and 2021, he had more than 13,000 casualties in the civilian population being killed by Zelensky's regime. And this is why they went for the Minsk Treaty. May I remind you, it was for France and Germany to make it respected. They didn't give a shit. Didn't do it. Why? Because there was no financial interest behind. Well, this is clear. It's crazy, but it's the way it happens today. And none of your media, your mainstream media, some call them fake news media, I can't completely disagree, of course, didn't relay the information when Putin was coming back again and yet again about it. Of course he struck a military operation on 24th of February last year. Of course he did. But he was pushed by NATO to do it because he said, I accept NATO forces in Poland, in Hungary, in all the countries which are his border. A bit like, if Russian troops or Russian, missiles were installed in Canada or Mexico. I mean, would you think that this is actually possible? It would be a Cuba-like crisis, like instantly. And yet the Russian, being good strategist and pragmatic, I'd say, understood that they had so much trading interests with the western part of Europe that was going to maintain peace. And professional warriors at NATO, they pushed until, of course, they wanted to include Ukraine into it. And the Russian had long said, don't touch Ukraine, please. It's part of Russia. Historically speaking, it's part of our history. We do not wish to receive your warheads, your cruise missiles that you can load with conventional weapons, but as well as nuclear warheads, on our territory. Please don't do that. And we did. We pushed, and pushed. This is not on. By the way, Putin has 80% support of the population in support for him. In the Western world, when one of our leaders reaches 35% of favorable opinion among the population, wow, let's do a party, this is pretty good. No, 80% of Russian population supports Putin. Do you think it's because they're all totally dumb? No, they're not. They just look at the way we do not respect the treaties we sign versus their way of respecting the fact that we've progressed with our military forces on literally all the border of China, of Russia, excuse me. Last thing, as I said, they are 10 years ahead of us in terms of the vectors, the type of missiles they're using in order to strike at us if they so wish. Like a week and a half ago, the Americans, they've just tried their new hypersonic technology reaching Mach 6 times the speed of sound. Good for them. The Russians are between 12 and 24 times the speed of sound, as I've just said. You know, you want to go at war with those guys. But are you out of your mind? Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here because this is getting too much, literally. I can feel your pain behind your screen when you realize that you've been betrayed by your medias, your government. You live in an empire of lies, of manipulation, which is striked upon you. And it must be very painful. I understand that, and I'm going to put your mind at ease and rest for the time being. But let me remind you, we all against wars. We are all against wars, and it is for you, a citizen of a democracy, to have a direct impact on your government and take those kind of decisions. You must stop sending weapons. Weapons are there to kill people, to maintain the war, to make it last longer, to have your kids dying on the battlefield. Stop it. Stop it. Make sure we amend the democracies so that we define the boundaries between which the politician can evolve and take decision on your behalf. That's my goal. This is what I'm going to suggest to you in the weeks to come. And I guarantee you the success. I guarantee it. Peace out.